Salutations to the Truth Core, whoever and wherever you may be across the planet. In an upload I did a day or so ago, I used the word authenticity. It came up in an anecdote I told about how a prominent New Age guru, self-defined guru, who owned a publishing company in Santa Fe, deleted that word from the lexicon of my book, The Seeker's Handbook, which came out in March of 1991. In the context of that little anecdote, I went on to explain my notion of mantique and my reasons for not using the terms spiritual and spirituality. But I didn't come back to the word authentic in that talk. And it occurred to me that it's appropriate because what I said, in fact, was that mantique is authentic spirituality. And the terms spiritual and spirituality have become so debased and so corrupted that they're no longer useful, and even more so, they are not useful due to the fact that they often refer to forms of spirituality which are inauthentic. So in my view, spirituality in and of itself has become inauthentic. Bear with me just for a moment here where I make a typical excruciating Gnostic nuance. Recall that I said that spirituality can be distinguished from religion in this way, that spirituality at least teaches something about consciousness and the mind and the intelligence of the universe, which religion does not. No religion teaches anything about that. Religions teach obedience and submission, if you can call that teaching. I also mentioned that there are some metaphysical, occult, and philosophical systems which might legitimately be called spiritual due to the fact that they do treat consciousness. They investigate it and they describe the workings of consciousness. You can include in that category Vedic philosophy, the Upanishads, the entire realm of yogic teachings about the mind-body connection. You can include some brilliant elements of Pali language teachings of Buddhism, especially about the concept of anatam, or the non-self, and also, of course, the whole 9 yanas, Hinayana, Mahayana, Vajrayana, Buddhism in general, Tibetan Buddhism in particular. Well, there's no question that these systems treat extensively of the workings of consciousness, so they could be called legitimately spiritual. However, what I find is that those teachings as they survive today have become inauthentic. I consider Buddhism to be entirely corrupt and inauthentic, rotted out at the core. Same thing, more or less, for Tantric Buddhism, Tibetan Buddhism, and Vajrayana. Although I've drawn deeply on those sources, I find that those representing those systems today, from the Dalai Lama all the way down the line through the Karmapas and the Tulkus, give examples. The teachers today of those systems are examples of inauthentic voices. So it might be appropriate, in the interest of my pathetic attempt to appear coherent, to say a little more about authenticity. So So are you ready for this? Snuggle up and pull up your pajamas, your jammies. Don't pull them up too tight, just so they're snug and comfortable. Sit back and relax, and here comes the riff. How about if I introduce my exposition by reading the definition of authenticity from the Seeker's Handbook? It did get to be included, and it sounds like this. Authenticity, the primary criterion for the validity of spiritual knowledge, that it comes from a source or author who is original and reliable, requires no badges or labels. From Greek, authentes, one who acts on his own. From auto, self, and hentes, which is an Indo-European base, which means to achieve or practice, thus self-achieving. That's the definition of authenticity, and just for the fun of it, there is a further reference in the lexicon. It says, also see delusion. Oh, what a delightful notion. Delusion. How does the Seeker's Handbook define delusion? From the Latin ludere, to play, and the prefix de, or away or from. Thus, that which goes away from play. 1. The condition of spiritual ignorance in which the true nature of the self and the world is mistaken or missed entirely. By strict reference to the Latin root, whatever you can't play with may be a delusion. This accords with the Eastern wisdom that teaches that the nature of all creation is divine play. 2. In recovery, take note, the process of lying to oneself and making it work, or at least maintaining the appearance that it works, usually coupled with denial. Thus, delusion is not just not having fun, it is persisting in what is not pleasurable or good for oneself while pretending that it is. All that written in 1990, 30 years ago, doesn't it bring up the vision of people wearing muzzles, believing that it's good for their health and they even like it? So, what is authenticity? How do you know it when you see it? How do you know it when you have it? When you yourself express it? There are two primary marks of authenticity. The first is originality. Authenticity is self-achieving. So if you are authentic in any area of life, whether it be dance, cooking, botany, rock climbing, whatever, then you are able to express from your experience innately what you originally know. And even though, for instance, if you are a cook and you have learned cooking from a master chef, if you have truly learned it and made it your own, then it is authentic. And you may repeat the recipe of the master chef just as you learned it, but it comes from you in an original form. It reproduces itself in you originally. So originality is the first mark or standard of authenticity. I would take a moment here to point out that being able to perceive authenticity in others is just as important and complementary to having authenticity yourself. Let me give you an example. Suppose that I go on a rock climbing course. and there is the master rock climber, and there are 3 other people on the course, and I'm the newcomer, I'm the neophyte. Well, I look to the master rock climber as someone of authority, meaning that I trust that they know what they're doing. They have proven their skills. They have proven that they can, for instance, exercise rock climbing mantique. Well, what is rock climbing mantique? Well, it means that the master rock climber stands in front of the cliff and he or she can read the cliff, can read it, and can look instantly and know the parts of it that will be difficult, the parts of it that will require certain ropes, certain pitons, and the parts of it that will require very tricky and perhaps dangerous moves. And I trust the authenticity of the master rope climber based on the original experience of that person. Now, there I am, the neophyte, and there are 3 other people on this team with me. And let's say that one of those people is a faker or a phony. The other 2 are sincere students who are learning. Well, in the course of the exercise, I can learn and share what I'm learning with the other 2 who are genuinely becoming authentic in their own way. They are genuinely acquiring mastery of rock climbing. But one of these 3 people is a fake and a phony, and I have to learn to perceive that, because that individual could tell me something that could cause me harm. That's just a simple example. Many others come to mind. The recognition of those individuals who are truly authentic stands radically and brutally with the recognition of authorities. Authorities are not authentic. No authorities are authentic. Billionaires, millionaires, CEOs, heads of humanitarian organizations, masterminds of science, medical professionals, with some rare exceptions, are not authentic. Do not trust anyone who is not authentic. The authorities are not authentic because the power that they wield is based on an illusion of power, and in fact, they don't genuinely, originally, and innately have power. They depend on having power over others by promoting and enforcing the illusion of power. Do not trust the authorities. Learn to perceive and trust those who are authentic so that you can become authentic yourself. The first standard then of authenticity is originality. The second standard is, what can I call it? It's construction. When you have authenticity in any area, such as cooking, rock climbing, sailboating, what you know and what you can prove you know constantly builds. It constantly gets better. It constantly optimizes itself. So a character or a feature or mark of authenticity is that it builds. And this is due to the emergent force that is inherent in being original. The emergent force of an insight, for instance. Take a botanist. Picture me in another scenario where I'm going on a tour of some countryside with a botanist. The botanist has botanical mantique. He or she reads the countryside, reads the flowers, the lay of the land, reads the atmosphere, and can prove what he or she knows in practical terms. This plant is poisonous, this plant is medicinal. That's authentic knowledge. And when you have authentic knowledge in any field whatsoever, you have insight that builds, it never stops growing, it never stops getting better, richer, and more clear. Individuals who are authentic, you will find, no matter what field, have the qualities of elegance and sophistication. It's really that simple, my friends. Those are the marks, standards of authenticity. And there is one other fundamental factor. Remember that true spirituality, if it were legitimate, would say something about consciousness. Well, what can you say about consciousness? We can say a lot of things about it. However, what you say, what a Tibetan master might say, or a Zen master, or anyone else, won't hold together unless they say something else. So everyone who pretends to speak about consciousness, to teach about it, has to say one fundamental thing to make whatever they say hang together. And what is that fundamental thing? What is that fundamental concept? It is the framing of consciousness. How is consciousness framed? What is its framework? This notion of framing is absolutely essential to the ontology, epistemology, and phenomenology of any chatter about consciousness. Now, lest I sound like I'm going off the deep end here, I live off the deep end, and saying things which are a little bit too complicated or whatever, I'll put it in the form of an assertion. You can have authenticity, but you cannot have it on your own. It is your own achievement. It is the proof of your mastery, of your own mind, of your body-mind, your mastery of life. But you cannot have this mastery of life on your own. No one can be authentic on their own. So what am I saying? What's the implication? Authenticity in its elementary and primal dimension depends on you knowing the frame in which you can know anything. It depends on you being conscious in the frame of what gives you consciousness. And what gives you consciousness? What allows you to be an intelligent animal moving about the earth? Well, in Gnostic terms and in the framework of planetary Tantra, it is the intelligence of the earth itself, considered as a divine presence, the sovereign mind of the earth, the living intelligence of the planetary animal mother, Sophia. You live in her intelligence. You're a product of it, and her intelligence frames yours. So you cannot be authentic in your intelligence or anything you know or do without knowing what that frame is, and without being immediately and palpably aware that you are in that frame. During the Mandela Effect Decoded series in 2017, I introduced a term and an acronym, PSI. And I said at that time to those who might not be comfortable with all of this elaborate and grandiose language that I use regarding the Aeon Sophia, your divine mother, the Aeonic mother, and so forth, which is animistic language. Well, I said, look, if you're not comfortable with that animistic language, and if you don't find yourself in a place in your mind and in your life where you can look at the earth as a superorganism, as an actual animal, she is an animal, it's a female animal. If you can't go there, then just go to the PSI, which is the plenary sovereign intelligence. Why is it plenary? Because it contains everything and pervades everything. Why is it sovereign? Because it is absolutely autonomous and independent, living, thinking, feeling, and acting in its own right. That's the principle of deep ecology, by the way. The earth is a sovereign animal, living, feeling, and acting in its own right, even independent of human presence on the earth. And intelligence, PSI, intelligence is what nature is. Nature is the manifestation of a living intelligence in which you partake. And when you know that you partake in that frame, then you have the foundation to be authentic, because you know that your authenticity is not something you achieve on your own. You achieve it in relation to and in dynamic coupling with the greater frame of intelligence provided to you by the earth, by the Aeon Sophia, who is a divine entity on the galactic scale. So that's about it. I'll leave it at that. I won't elaborate further, but I will signal you to a unit on nemetu.org, which is entitled On Authenticity, Authenticas Nous. Authenticas Nous is Greek, and it's taken directly from a document in the Corpus Hermeticum in the first book. And the title of that book, the title of that first treatise, is called Poimandres, Poimandres. And this is a made-up Greek word which means something like the guardian or advisor of the mind, or even the shepherd of the mind. And in this unit, I elaborate further on the notion of authenticity. Doing so, I cite that document. I work from 4 different translations. And I point out that authenticas nous, authentic mind, is actually the sovereign mind of the earth itself, the sovereign mind of the goddess Sophia. And it is also your mind. It's not an article of faith. It's not an article of supposition or presumption, and it's certainly not an item of make-believe, that you wouldn't even have a mind to listen to my words if she didn't give it to you in the first place. So there you go. I invite you to go to nemetu.org, and if you register as a visitor at no obligation and no cost, you can access this unit, which contains a further exposition of this wonderful and enlightening concept of authenticity. Enough said, and I'll be seeing you in the beauty to come.